Hi everyone, I'm David Reeder, and we are off deck. U.S. National Championships and World Championship trials coming up really quickly beginning Tuesday, June 27th in Indianapolis. Plenty of storylines to discuss for that meet, and for that we bring in John Lone. He's been a correspondent for Swimming World and Swim Vortex. John, it is always great to talk swimming with you. How are you today?
I'm good, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to start with the women's events on this show. Maybe we'll do the men's on a later show. Naturally, that starts with Katie Ledecky. She hasn't slowed down since Rio. What do you expect from her this week?
I think what we're going to see is just a kind of a setting of her platform for Budapest. Just establishing where she's going to swim. I don't think there's any mystery of what's going to happen here. It'll be a 2, 4, 8, and 1500 free. But I think to expect anything like she did in Rio, time-wise, this is not where that's going to happen. So, she'll do her thing where she's head and shoulders above everybody else, but the big show is going to come a little bit later this summer.
Yeah. Do you think it's a case of maybe she won't get to those times this year, or just because it's nationals, it's early in the season, we're 3 weeks out from Worlds?
It's a heck of a question because, there's no such thing as in a non-Olympic year. It's just a lot less. The preparation might not be as geared because everybody's worried about that every fourth year. So can she get to those times? I mean, she's one of the last people. She falls in that Michael Phelps category of you don't ever want to bet against them. But if she doesn't, it's not going to be a surprise because so much was put into that Rio 2016 season that it could be forgiven, obviously, for 2017 to be used as more of a stepping stone toward 20.
Yeah. I think, though, for the mile, there's got to be some room there for the taking just because she hasn't swum that race in a couple years for a possible world record.
Right.
And also, she's shown she's adapted pretty well so far to living on the West Coast, being at Stanford. So you're right, you don't count her out.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's the interesting thing too is to now see what that year at Stanford will do transferring over to long course. So there's that X factor in the equation also. And if NCAAs were any indication, and obviously it's not an apples to apples comparison in any way, but it seems like things are going really well with Greg Meehan, and why shouldn't they? Greg Meehan's established himself as one of the great coaches in the world presently, and continues to churn out top performances by his athletes. And why shouldn't Katie have improved under his watch? It's just a matter of where are they in the cycle, and that's the thing. Tokyo is going to be the focal point.
Yep, for sure. No real drama, though, this week in those mid-distance to distance frees. Now, the 100 free will be interesting to see how much progress Ledecky has made. The sprints, especially the 100, seems really wide open aside from the Olympic gold medalist Simone Manuel, who's got to be the favorite with the way she's been swimming really since Rio. How do you see this one unfolding? Where do you think Ledecky factors in?
Well, and I think you're 100% right. I mean, Simone Manuel has to be the headliner of that event, and then it does get intriguing behind. It's how much quicker can Katie get? She's already been a 52-something relay-wise. How much speed has she developed? Where is Abby Weitzel in terms of her development? And Mallory Comerford is going to be the one who tons of eyes are going to be on with her terrific college season and seemingly progressing each time she hits a competition. That's a very bright spot, I think, Comerford for the United States.
It's interesting thinking about these relays. The 800 free relay been dominant for a while. There's some turnover this year with people retiring, not being at this meet. The 400 relay maybe having an opportunity in this lack of Kate Campbell world to make some noise at the World Championships. So where do you see these two different relays coming into nationals and then going into World Championships?
Well, I think if you look at the 800 free relay, when you have an X factor like Ledecky, even though you take a Dorado out of there, who had obviously as good a farewell to a sport as you can pretty much etch, that was just some magical stuff in terms of her leaving on her note. There's more leeway for the United States there. You have Leah Smith still on that relay, and you have Comerford, who has established herself well 100, 200, maybe even probably better in the 200. So I like the wiggle room better there. But you're right, you take a Kate Campbell off of the Australian relay, and it opens things up. And it's neat because it seems like every time the Olympic cycle is in its early stages, it's when opportunity presents itself, and it's who's going to take advantage of those opportunities. And that's what this Nationals has me excited about, especially on the women's side. You look at like the 200 backstroke, for example. I don't know if you were going to get to this, but a young girl like a Regan Smith who is chomping at the bit to get her name, out there internationally. So this is a fun time because the turnover is there, new faces emerge, and that's what these relays could see just based on what's going to shake out in the top 6 of each of those 100, 200 freestyles.
Just because you mentioned the 200 back, and I think it's worth talking about the 200s of stroke as a whole, because there are holes in all of them. No Maya Dorado or Missy Franklin in backstroke. Breaststroke was very weak this past year. I mean, really since Michael Lawrence kind of fell off a cliff after 15. The 200 fly, Camille Adams probably not going to be there. We haven't seen her since Rio. So really a lot of openings in all of those events. And certainly no guarantees for medals. Very unlikely, I'd say, at this point, the U.S. wins any medals in those events in Budapest. Yeah,
that probably is where the weak points are. Because you go back to Rio, you look at how the 200 breaststroke was probably the weakest point of the women's team. Katie Miley is capable, but if you look at where the rest of the world is, the Japanese, Afimova, they're just a good size ahead of the United States there. Like you said, the 200 butterfly. Haley Flickinger is going to be solid, but where is it in terms of the world? We just saw from Germany, we 206 low, I believe, from there. We've seen times from Japan being solid. Belmonte from Spain's going to be a factor. So this is a definite, this is where the thin part is. But the thing is, every time that we always shake our head and wonder, oh, okay, maybe this is the weak part. And I've learned this lesson over the past because I've been guilty of it. Saying, gosh, what are they going to do here? There's somebody steps in, somebody fills the void, and everybody's shoulders go from above the ears, nice and relaxed a little bit. Oh, there's the next gun. Okay, everything's fine.
And if it doesn't happen this summer, whoever makes the team will get some experience. People will get experience at World University Games, and the U.S. is better off for it 2-3 years down the line. And that's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a process.
Yep.
And as cliche as that might sound, and the Sixers in the NBA have been throwing that out for years now, but this is about a build, and I keep saying this today. This is about Tokyo now. There's no other way around it. The sport is built around quads.
And maybe by the time we get to Tokyo, the Sixers will actually be good. Meanwhile, moving on from that.
You're talking to a Philly kid, so he's hoping.
Let's get on to the hundreds of stroke because there's really not a lot of weak spots in those. Let's start with breaststroke because Lilly King is the headliner because of what she's been doing through the college season, winning the Olympic gold medal. Katie Miley's been good as well, so is Molly Hannes. But what's interesting for me is seeing King going up against the times put up by Yulia Efimova recently, the 104.8 in the 100 breaststroke. Now the top time in the world, the top time in 4 years, I think. So. Right. What's King's going to be? What's she going to be thinking going into that 100 breaststroke with and my opinion is she's going to be thinking about Efimova.
Well, and here's how I think she'll be thinking about Efimova too, but I think in this way. We've seen Lilly King. She's never been afraid to voice an opinion or lack any amount of confidence. I think this is going to spur her on. She's the type of person who likes to answer a challenge. She's not afraid to back down. She won't back down. She's not afraid of anything. And whether people like that or not, and her outspokenness, which I thought last year was very gutsy on the stage because a lot of people are afraid to do that on the Olympic stage. I would think she definitely locked that little 104.8 into her mind there and said, okay, it's there. I know what I need to do now. And it may not be at nationals again because she's probably has a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah. I feel like with several of the top people we'll talk about, the women's side and the men's side, maybe we'll hold back a little bit, like King, in terms of the whole preparation for nationals just because it is the 3 weeks and it's hard to, fully train and taper again in 3 weeks. So that's an interesting point. Plus, she won't have anyone to push her, and we've seen her in races where she doesn't have anyone to push her kind of be a little flat, even though I think it should be still enough to win. The women's 100 backstroke. Now this, I think, is the most competitive event on the women's side. You have an Olympic silver medalist and an Olympic finalist who've both been 58s. Two people who've been 59.4s this year. A teenager who's been 59.7. Plenty of other good options here. So I didn't even name names there, but I think some of them will be pretty obvious. So what are you thinking about this event?
Well, Kathleen Baker has to be the one who's just flying with tons of confidence coming off of Rio. That was a a huge step forward for her in a career, where she was someone who was going to be a consistent, probably national teamer for the United States and a member of international squads, to someone who's a podium person now, and that can elevate. I mean, there's no reason for her to ever doubt whether she can compete on that stage. She knows what she can do, yep. And you would hope that carries forward. Yeah, Allie Duluth has been someone who consistent. We've seen some 59s if yep. I'm remembering right. So it's going to be an intriguing event, and my gosh, how fast that event has gotten now. Where really 59 is like, okay, it's got to be 59 down a little bit, and then faster, obviously.
With the two you mentioned, Olivia Smoliga, Hana Stevens, I think this is going to take a 58 to make the team, and that's bold, but
that's bold. But it's just possible.
I think it's that deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's intriguing because you take somebody like Missy Franklin out of the mix, and as she attends to the shoulder recovery and getting herself back to when she's going to be able to compete and compete on her terms mm-hmm. in the way she wants to, that there really isn't going to be a deficit in the backstroke for the United States.
Yeah, at least not in the 100.
Right.
Getting back to Maya Dorado, we talked about the 200 back a little bit and how there's a void there in the IMs. Maybe some pieces there that could fall into place as soon as this summer. Who do you see stepping up and kind of filling those holes in the 200 and 400 IM?
Well, Madison Cox has been consistent collegially. You've seen Bethany Gollett do really well. There's some names out there that can provide a punch. What are you going to get from Elizabeth Beisel in the 400 IM? That's going to be an intriguing question mark. But she also has a monster base that she's had for years.
Yep.
So there are some. There's questions to be answered, and that's the exciting part of nationals. We can sit here, and that's probably the easy way out. There's questions to be answered, but there's some stuff that right now you're just, at least from my end, it's like, it's gonna have to be a wait and see approach.
Yeah, it's funny that basically the only event we haven't talked about is the women's 100 fly, where there's a big hole without Dana Vollmer, but there's Kelsey Worrell, who's the clear favorite, yeah. And then there's some events like the 400 IM that there's 4 or 5 different women who could all make the team, and you're just going to kind of have to see who's on when the meet starts.
Pretty much, yeah. And we'll get it's a little different too with, I guess, a 5-day meet here. Mm-hmm. So, people are going to have to pick and choose a little bit also in terms of their game plan and not burning themselves out to over a shorter format. But we'll get an idea right off the top. Day one, it's like, okay, this person's firing, this person may not be.
Yeah. Any before we let you go, John, any final bold predictions you want to throw out there? Women only.
Hey, of course, I wasn't prepared for that one. No, I'm good.
Okay.
I know where my prediction is on the men's side. So I guess we'll save that for when we chat about the men. But no, I'm just very intrigued to see how the pieces start coming together.
Yeah, it will be fun to watch. John, thanks for joining us. John Lone joining us here on Off Deck to discuss the Nationals with the women's events. Very intriguing meet coming up in Indianapolis. We appreciate John joining us. Thanks everyone for watching today. I'm David Reeder. We'll see you to talk about the men soon enough.